Welcome back to the MetaMinds podcast, where we help conscious people destroy their limiting beliefs so that they can live the life of their dreams. On today's episode, we had Noel Elie join us. She is an actress as well as just a mindset expert. There was so much within this about ego and limiting beliefs, and a lot about aspiring actors and actresses, like what kind of things you can expect from the industry, what kind of things took her off guard, and some really practical kind of practices within place of how to get through some of those obstacles, some of those limiting beliefs. It was great.
Yeah, guys, if you're a struggling artist or if you have any projects that you're working on, you are going to run into your ego and it's going to try and stop you. And yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in this episode. She's has a very calm presence, and we really appreciated that. And she's very vulnerable with a lot of her findings. So definitely jump into this one. If you're an artist, you're going to get a lot of value out of this one. So Noel, thank you very much for joining us. Just to put you on the spot here, we want to dive in with a pretty hard question. So we know that you have you're ready for it. We know that you have a background in acting. So for example, if you met kind of your dream director that you would like to work with just at a bus stop or something, and he was about to jump on a bus and he was like, "Oh, I've seen you somewhere. Can you pitch me kind of, who you are and why I should have you in my movie?" And he's got a movie coming up. What do you say in that kind of 30 seconds before that bus comes?
Well, it would be Direction France. I adore your films, A Place Beyond the Pines, Blue Valentine. The way you capture people from such a beautiful humanity is incredible, and it would be a dream to work with you. I really enjoy playing the underdog and telling the stories of the woman who has to sell her body because she can't pay for milk for her kids, or the lawyer who is fighting for a family that's about to be torn apart because they're going to be deported. And it would be a dream. And it literally doesn't matter how big or how small. You are my favorite director, so I will, whatever you need, I'm down. From a moral standpoint.
Of course.
Wait.
Back up. Not that we have to add that, but it should be a given. But
it should be. But this is Hollywood, so
yeah. And also 2021 now. So
right.
Well, also it sounds like you're prepared for that moment.
Oh, I have not, but thank you.
Really?
Yeah.
You were very calm and collected for standing in front of your favorite director.
It's an actor.
Yeah.
I love that question. That's a tough one.
Yeah, well, you definitely handled it well, jumping straight onto a kind of aggressive note. Sorry about that. We haven't done that before, but we're like, you know what? Why not?
It's good. Do you guys know who Direction France is?
I've definitely not personally, but I know some of the films that you mentioned there for sure. So I have a film background as well. So yeah,
nice
films and whatnot. So awesome. So you've done quite a lot of stuff to get to the point that you are right now. I suppose just to dive into it again, what would you say is kind of the most important habit that attributes to your success?
Never giving up. If you don't quit, you'll never fail. I moved to New York when I was 18, 2 days after I graduated high school. I had $800 to my name, which literally paid for my first month rent, and that was it. I lived off of I would go to the deli and get turkey subs, and they were big subs, so I would ration the meat to last me a week. I mean, I struggled. I did the hard work, and I just never gave up. I just kept doing the thing, and I guess the biggest advice I'd give is it's not an overnight thing. That was the dream. I thought by 21, I would be well on my way. And, that wasn't necessarily the case, but I'm grateful for all the lessons and the hardships that I had, because, if I had success back then, I'd be a much different person,
Yeah, definitely. And Noel, I guess something I'm curious about, there's a lot of actors and actresses out there who are aspiring to get into the limelight and get into a position where this is sustainable for them. And I guess I'm wondering, if you were to cast your mind back to an audition that you were extremely nervous about, and you didn't really know what to expect. Maybe there was a lot of competition out there. like what kind of advice do you have for people putting themselves out and going into a situation that is extremely nerve-wracking and still being able to have your back and be confident walking in? Like, do you have any advice or practices you do?
I mean, it kind of sounds a little cliche, but like really practice the self-love. If you're doing it for validation, it's not going to feel good, because when you get that validation, you still have that void. So like, if you're not okay with yourself, whether it's self-love or whatever, like if you're not okay with who you are, just because you're in front of the camera isn't going to change that. And so, I'm thinking back to one audition I had where it was a director session, producer session for Law and Order SVU. Have you guys ever seen that show?
Yeah.
And it was, I walked in and I was thinking there would be like a few people in there. There were like 12 or 15 people. And the director was behind the camera, but I guess he got excited when I was going. And so he started like rocking back and forth.
Wow.
It completely took me out. And now, knowing what I know now, I would have like just kind of calmed down, centered myself, and just got back in it. But instead, I just got so distracted and, completely flubbed. And so I think remembering that we're all human, it doesn't matter, who the casting director is, who the director is, who the person is, just coming from that like human to human standpoint, and all the self-love and being okay with yourself. That's what makes the real stars stand out,
I really love that point, and it's kind of like you mentioned, it's cliche, but just to kind of hit it home, like I don't think it is, but like people say that, but they don't really dive into like the deeper kind of aspect of it. And so like just something that I've been doing kind of recently for myself, I don't even know how this kind of experiment started, but whether I'll be in the car or in the morning when I'm like brushing my teeth, like I literally just look at myself and say I love you, and like this is pretty vulnerable for me to say, like this, that's like a lot of people go, oh, that's a weird thing to do. But you do that like 5 times in a row and you really mean it, because how many people actually do or say that to you on a regular basis and really mean it? And you literally feel like a glow afterwards, And it's like whatever practice you can implement to like actually practice self-love, I think that's extremely important. So yeah, thank you for that.
Totally.
That's really good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing the vulnerable share. It's so true. And I was in therapy for many years, and my therapist would be like, you got to love yourself. And I'd be like, I do love myself, especially like producing some of the events I'd produce and like working for thought leaders. I'm like, I know about self-love, but it's so different when you can do exactly what you're saying. Like really look yourself, not even look at the mirror, like look yourself in the eye. Like really go to your iris and see this person and tell them you love them. And it doesn't matter what they've done to mess up. They're worthy of love. I mean, it makes all the difference.
And it's super uncomfortable. Like if you've never done
it's so uncomfortable.
You're like, what is this? It's weird. Like nobody says this to me with this intensity.
Right.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like, just reflecting on some of the clients I've worked with and like in that counseling space, like that's something that has been extremely hard when I've got clients to do that. Like that has been something that has been like the most challenging thing for them to do. I didn't even realize you were doing that, man. But like,
that's what we do here in Meta.
Yeah.
Up to each other.
So like, that's really cool. And I guess like to kind of build on that going into an audition, like, do you have any other practices? Like there's got to be a lot of mindset development that goes into you building your confidence to be able to put yourself out there and be in an uncomfortable position. So what kind of other practices would you say you have to prepare?
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of depends, because there's some auditions where, you're given several days to prepare. And so, the material inside and out. And so in that situation, generally, I try to get really free. And like, when I lived in New York, I'd ride the subway and I'd take off my headphones and talk to people and just like really connect and watch people or connect with people. It put me in a really freeing space. And then there's times where you get literally 12 hours with like 9 pages of material and it feels impossible. And I used to psych myself out when that would happen. And now I would just, kind of say to myself, like, you know what, we're given this amount of time. We're going to do the best we can. And let's go for it. I'm not going to put any pressure on myself to know, the exact dialogue. I'm just going to be in the moment, and I'm going to connect with casting director and whoever it is. And either they're going to love me or they're not, and that's okay. And I'm just going to show up as myself. And I would say one of the biggest things for me that's a game changer is connecting with other actors in the audition room. Because when you're waiting and there are 15 other, olive skin toned, brown-eyed, brown-haired girls that look just like me in the room, it can really be, psych you out. And, I always just try to start up conversation from a very authentic place and see what happens.
That's great. That really reminds me of like just the ego, like a lot of people in that situation could be like completely reserved and have that comparison trap of like, well, why am I better than that person? Or, they're my competition, so I'm not even going to engage. And I guess, there's elements of what you're doing, which is like, extremely authentic, but then I'm sure that would take people off guard as well. Like I'm sure other people sitting there maybe don't do the same as you.
Who's this bitch? Why is she talking to me? Like,
right. Yeah, no. And I've had that sort of response. And I also think too, you have to find the boundaries for yourself. I'm generally like a really outgoing person. And at the same time, if I have a scene that's super vulnerable and emotional, and I know I have to go there, that I can't necessarily like shoot the shit with somebody next to me. You know what I mean? I've got to sort of be in my space. And that's been really interesting because sometimes having casting directors come out and want to like hug and be like, Noel, I have to just be like, wait till after my audition, please. You know what I mean? And that's been a hard thing as well. And so I think it's just like finding your boundaries and testing the limit with that.
Awesome. Yeah. So just to kind of build on that, like, in my experience as an artist, I produce music, I produce video, like I do all that kind of thing. With my ego, like I definitely notice myself, like I have this kind of entitlement. There's a lot of people that have fierce competition around me, all aiming for the exact same goal. And sometimes I'm put in the same room as them as well. So it's like, for me, like my ego kind of flares up and I see people and I'm like, why are they having that success? And who are they to think like, why do they deserve that? Like I deserve this, people don't even recognize who I am. And, so it's like, I guess I want to kind of hear some of your experience with that. Cause I know that like I say competition here is fierce, but I've been to LA and man, the competition there is insane. Like everyone is on their grind. So like, I can't imagine how, whether you have an ego or not, I mean, you seem pretty humble. So like, has your ego kind of gotten in the way in that sense? And has it maybe sabotaged you at all? Or
Sure. I mean, sure. I'm human, right? Like, yeah, it's, I try to quiet her down, but it can definitely build, and usually it starts with like a silent whisper, and then it gets bigger and bigger, right? But one of the things I really try to focus on is, as you said, like we have people in our space and friends or colleagues or frenemies or whatever it is who they're getting all of the success, right? So I try not to come from like, well, why do they have this? Like I work just as hard because I've been there, and to me, I use it as something to propel me forward. So, perfect example, I have a friend who, their life is about to change. They booked something that is massive. And it's easy for me to sit back and say, well, they had amazing representation from the get-go. They had someone who paid for their bills. They didn't have to work. They didn't, like it's very easy for me to go into that. And instead, I asked them, I said, tell me exactly what you did to book this. I mean, first of all, I was like, congratulations and crying, but also like, tell me exactly what you did. And they said, Noel, I took quarantine and busted my tail and worked on my craft every single day. Every single day I worked on my craft. And I knew that when I walked into that audition, I was giving it my all. And there was no doubt about that. And I sat back and asked myself, Noel, have you throughout quarantine and COVID been working on your craft every single day? No. Well, get to work. And so it's like trying to take the good gems out of any situation and using that to continue to propel you to your destiny. And so that's something that helps me. My husband and I have friends who they sort of sometimes get triggered or like annoyed or frustrated. I get that way too, but it's like, no, flip the script,
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, like, taking that kind of energy, like you could potentially ruin such an amazing friendship with someone if you let your ego take control anyway, which in turn, like, I'm sure in an industry like that, you do not want to burn any bridges. I'm sure that's quite important to make sure that you're quite humble and connected with a lot of people. So I guess, like, in terms of, like, people wanting to get into this space, like you said right at the beginning there that you wanted to, become successful by the age of 21. And that was something that you kind of thought, this is achievable. This is something I can do. And then, you're in a great position now by the looks of it, but obviously it's taken time to get to that point. So is there anything else, like, besides like persistence and staying on your grind and staying humble, like, is there anything else, like, habit wise, that has contributed to you getting into this position today?
Sure. I think, I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called human design. Have you ever heard of human design? It's kind of like, it's a little woo-woo. It has to do with astrology, but not really. Basically, like, you put in your birth date and your the time you were born, where you were born, and it kind of tells you your makeup. And I very recently started diving into that. And what I found is there's actually a lot of things that resonate with me. And one of those things is I've always lived my life like this. It's either a hell yes or a hell no. And if it doesn't light me up and excite me, it's probably not for me. And so what I mean by that is, I've worked every job under the sun as a struggling actor, like artist. And it's easy to become bitter when you're having to work so hard and so much, and you see these people succeeding and you see them doing the thing. And instead I would just try to, like, go within each time and say, okay, this is guiding me. Like, I am being guided. I'm taking the steps, and one of the things I say, my mantra every day is, I'm divinely guided. And I just trust that I'm divinely guided. And, having a morning routine has also been really helpful. So, like, doing some breath work. And even if I don't have time to do breath work, deep breathing and, talking to my body, talking to myself. It feels very strange, like you said, but you start to notice these tiny shifts that happen daily. And then you look back over the course of a month or a year or years, and you see, wow, by doing these little tiny actions, this just set me up for success. And so, just do the work, train, even if it's 5-10 minutes a day, do it. Try not to get triggered when your ego comes into play, and also, if it does come, like, let it be, and like, really feel the emotion, and then it can shift, because it's like scientifically proven. I don't know the exact stats, but I think you can't hold on to an emotion when you truly feel it longer than 60 or 90 seconds. So once you, like, feel that emotion, if it's anger that someone else booked the thing, feel it hardcore, and then let it shift, and it'll move into a different emotion, and then feel that and let it shift. And eventually you're going to come back to a place of peace, but you have to feel the emotion, because otherwise we're, like, anesthetized, we're numbing it out. Right.
Yeah.
So, feeling the emotions, doing the morning routines, doing the work, and not giving up.
It's definitely, like, a hard thing to to do, is actually go into emotion, especially if you perceive it to be, like, a negative one. As you said, you want to do whatever you can to, like, escape it. You put TV in the road or your screen or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, but I think you're right on that, because it's like, if you can go into it, really feel it, then you realize it's, like, not even that real. It's not even that valid.
Right.
So,
I mean, and I definitely was there. I remember being a young actor and someone saying to me, like, well, we all have good in us and we all have bad in us. And I remember literally, like, arguing with them, being like, well, no, I'm a good person. What are you talking about? And I couldn't actually look at that. And now I'm like, oh, how cute, little Noel, but we have, like, polarity, like the good and the bad. You can accept that there's this bad there, but feel it, and then you can go back to the good. But if you don't feel it, that's when we get dis-ease in our body. That's when we, gain weight. That's when we get depressed. And so I think, just encouraging people to feel all the feels, and it will pass.
That's definitely a millennial way to frame that. Hey guys, feel all the feels. People connect with that. So a question that a previous podcast that we were on actually hit us with, they flipped the script and asked, but I think is an amazing question. So we're going to hit you with it right now is, what's something that you believe right now that you think in a year or 5 years from now, you are most likely to not believe or to not be true anymore?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I suppose mindset wise, but it's a hard question. So whatever you can go.
Yeah. I think I struggle with being a fraud. Imposter syndrome, totally. Yeah. I struggle with it. And I think in 5 years, look, I would love for it not to be there, but I think it will be much, much smaller. And because I look at how where it started and where it is now, it's definitely shrunk. But I think in 5 years, ain't nobody got time for that. I think I'll be like, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, yeah, and I suppose I was going to say that before because again, because of the fierce competition where you are, I can imagine again it would be so easy for your ego to be like, why are you even doing this? It doesn't matter. You're not even that good. It's okay. Just give up. And it's kind of protecting you from failing. You know what I mean? So that's be the ultimate thing. And your situation is actually pushing through that. So I really hope for your sake that it's smaller as well. And also for our sake, because we all struggle with imposter syndrome. That's for sure.
Right. And I think, normalizing it, letting, continuing to have the conversation about it, because it's so easy to look at someone with success and say, well, they have it all together, they're fine, but we all struggle with it. And it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, Bruno Mars, he was at the Met Gala in New York a few years ago performing, and he, right before he went out on stage, he was walking back and forth, puked his guts up and then ran out to stage. It's like, and Barbara Streisand used to do that. These huge people do it. We all struggle with it, and it's okay.
So that's the secret. Like when you're about to do something big, just vomit, and then
just vomit, sweat and vomit. You're good.
This one down. Yeah, that's an important one. Oh, that's great. So outside of acting, what's a project you're working on right now that really kind of brings you like a glow or light that you're really passionate about?
Well, there's a few things. So outside of acting, I've been dealing with some health stuff, and I was recently diagnosed with Lyme disease and fibroid tumors and co-infections and black mold and just a litany of things that I wasn't expecting. And it scared me because they're very real and they're painful and they're scary, but also it scared me because I thought, generally on social media, I try to share my life and share real life. And when I found this out, I thought, okay, well, I can't share this because then the casting directors or the directors or these people in the industry who follow me, they're going to say, oh, well, she's the sick Lyme girl. Like, we can't hire her. And I just continued to quiet that ego and started to share. And as a result, I was opened up to this tribe of men and women who have chronic illness and who are so grateful for that connection and to know that they're not alone. And so as a result, I've been documenting my journey, and I'm creating a documentary around, Lyme disease and chronic illness. So that's exciting. And it's also me trying to make lemonade out of lemons,
That's
right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of like humans are so fragile, everything's perfect. And then all of a sudden this thing comes along like Lyme or whatever it may be. And it just totally screws you up because you had no idea that it existed and you have no idea how it started. And all of a sudden it's here and it's a big part of your life and you don't know what to do about it. You have to spend hours researching it and like, how did it happen? And what do I do about it now? And you find small communities, and they're the kind of things that make you feel sane again. Because when it
Yeah.
initially happens, you feel like you're the only person on the planet, and you're like, why doesn't anybody experience what I'm experiencing?
Yeah, it's so isolating. It's so true. And truthfully, like I had the thoughts because this has been like the past year of getting misdiagnosed and then getting diagnosed. And I had thoughts like, all right, well, if this is life, I don't know, maybe I'm good. I'm tired. I'm in pain. Like maybe this isn't, I'm lonely, maybe this isn't something worth fighting for. And then I was opened up to this world of struggling people who are making a difference and making a change. And it's brought life back in me again.
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful. And I think like that's one of the things that, social media really gets a lot of kind of negative criticism because it does play quite a negative role in society to some extent. But a story like that, I'm sure it'd be significantly harder to find a community, a physical community in a space where you could connect with people in that kind of in that vein. So I guess that's really powerful, and the fact that you've been able to share that is something that maybe, like you said, a lot of people wouldn't do, especially in your position because you are fearful of judgment. And like, have you had any? Like, has there been any kind of negative hit back from agencies or anyone?
No. No, there hasn't. And there's actually just been like an overwhelming amount of support. I've lost followers, because it's like less, pretty bikini shots or whatever, and more like, this is chronic Lyme. I can't get out of bed today, or whatever. But again, I'm grateful that I'm attracting the people that are supportive, and like the ones that aren't into it, bye. It's okay. It's okay.
You're connecting, I guess, with more quality connections over people who are looking for the vanity shots, things that
quality versus quantity. Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like that was a limiting belief that you had there. And that's like a big theme that we have on MetaMinds, is that it's like we think that everyone can live their dream life, but the one thing that is stopping them, the problem, is limiting beliefs, and they don't even know what they are, And so, for example, before you went public with this stuff, like you had this belief and it was limiting you because you were like, everyone's going to hate me and throw me away and that kind of thing. And then however you pushed through that, you did. And it turns out it was completely a lie that your brain was just telling you for some reason, So I suppose like maybe how did you actually kind of recognize that was a limiting belief and then like overcome
that? That's a great question. And I'm all about exposing the limiting beliefs because, we all get them all the time. And for me, I have to like out it to someone. So like I'll have the thought and the thought will stay and be persistent. So then I have to communicate it. And for me, it's like being mindful who I communicate my limiting beliefs to, because you will get, certain people who are a little bit more negative who are like, oh, you're right, you probably shouldn't, or whatever it is. So I do it in a safe space with people that I trust. So usually I'll talk to my husband, I'll talk to a couple of my best friends, and, they'll kind of be a sounding board. And usually what happens is I'll start to peel back layers. So, let's say I told you I'm afraid to post about Lyme because I'll be the weird, sick Lyme girl. Well, why do you feel that way? Well, because isn't that the case? No, there's people out there who resonate with you and they want to connect with you. And then I start to like peel back to, oh, okay, well, I guess this one time when I was 12, I vulnerably shared something with friends and got made fun of. So, oh, wow, that's actually where that stemmed from. So let me do a little bit of work around healing that moment in time. And so for me, that's kind of generally how I work, is I like peel back the layers to get to the root of, oh, wow, I wasn't safe when I said this. I wasn't safe when I said this. And, you like see where the pattern started and how it's grown and how you can kind of squash that.
Past trauma. It's hard work to do. And a lot of people don't know kind of how to do that.
Yeah.
That's really
I think it's like having someone on your team, in your squad, to ask you the tough questions, like get curious about why people are the way they are. Just be, have endless curiosity. Because we think, in my experience, I think I have answers, but then when I really sit with it, I'm like, oh, maybe I don't,
Yeah, exactly. And I think like you need that neutral party, someone outside of your experience, to be able to ask those questions that you potentially couldn't ask yourself. And you'll notice with a lot of people, they don't want to talk about tough things. So I think that's a really important thing that you've mentioned there. actually finding the people in your life who actually care about you. You know, like a lot of people might just go, oh yeah, that would suck. Anyway, this weekend I'm doing this. Like they don't actually ask you, wow, that must be really hard to sit with. Like, tell me about that. Like, let's actually try to understand what's going on for you. I think that's like really, really important, which a lot of people don't have. So that's great that you've recognized that and you've got some good people around you. I think like, you know, we've got to wrap it up very soon. It's been value packed, and really appreciate how like vulnerable you've been and how much wisdom you've given us and aspiring kind of actors and actresses. So I guess like, just for maybe a last question, unless Eamon or you've got something else to add, like if you were to kind of capture a moment right now that you could tell your future self, something that, you know, could be right now maybe that you're struggling with, or something that, like we spoke about before, something that you might not know how to deal with right now, but it might get easier. Like, is there anything that you could tell your future self in this moment right now that would be a good reminder moving forward? Like anything, like any sort of wisdom or anything that could be really helpful for your future self to kind of get through a tough situation, or to get through imposter syndrome or your ego? Like, is there anything right now that we could capture in a video that you could come back and watch?
Oof. I would say you are enough just as you are. You are not your dis-ease. You are inspiring and will continue to inspire people by simply being yourself and using your voice. And anytime that feels stifled, figure out what's blocking you and sort of shed that, because that's how you make waves. And it usually starts with like, you know, a ripple into a wave, into a tidal wave, into a tsunami, and trust that you are divinely guided.
I think that's a perfect place to end it. Thank you very much, Noel. It's been a fantastic podcast, and I really appreciate your presence.
Oh, thank you guys. You guys are so lovely. I'm so